Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our Tips and Tricks in J.D. Edwards Distribution webinar. I'm Kisha O'Madden, and I will be the moderator for today's event, and presenting will be Bernadette Dannemiller. As we get started, I wanted to review how you can participate in today's web event. You should see an example of the GoToWebinar attendee interface. The control panel is where you can interact with us. If you have any questions as we go along today, please go ahead and drop them in the attendee panel where the questions box is located, and Bernie will pause throughout and address a few questions. If we're unable to get to your questions though live, we will most certainly follow up afterwards. If you haven't been introduced to Terillium before, we are an ERP implementation firm. We've been doing J.D. Edwards for a very long time, 27 years to be exact. We specialize in implementing Oracle's three main ERP systems, J.D. Edwards, NetSuite, and Oracle's Cloud. While we've won several Oracle Partner Excellent Awards, we're most proud of our Customer Success Story of the Year Awards, I apologize, with having one owner, Warren Bach, who comes into the office every single day. He instills in us our mantra of, we're only as good as our last customer reference. We pride ourselves here at Terillium on customer satisfaction and really believe that it's a key to our success in showing customers that are willing to stand up and say we did a great job. With over 700 implementations over our long J.D. Edwards history, we've developed a methodology that's not only successful, but unique to Terillium. We have about 170 full-time W-2 consultants across the United States with over 16 years of industry experience on average. And again, this is very key to us because we're a company that has one vision under great leadership, and the end result are happy customers. We wish to bring you the very best that your company should expect and above all deserves. As you can see, Terillium's able to assist you with many of the J.D. Edwards project needs, from upgrades, managed services, implementations, to the cloud. We aim to be your go-to partner. And with all that said, I'll pass it over to Bernie so she can kick it off with the agenda and dive into the webinar.
Cam, so hi, if you can see me. So anybody that's joined probably already knows a little bit about what's on the agenda. It's probably why you chose to join. We're going to look at hopefully four, if we have time. We're going to look at four things that I class under tips and tricks in J.D. Edwards. I've been working with J.D. Edwards since 1998. I got into working with J.D. completely accidentally, and I've been consulting with Terillium for the last 14 years. And one of my favorite things about consulting is finding, usually accidentally tripping over or just having this moment of strange inspiration about how we can use tools and functionality in the system to do things that maybe it wasn't originally intended to do. And some of what I'm going to show you today, I think, falls under that category. But I also want to show a couple of things related to UDOs, to the user-defined objects, and ways in which I think that they can be easily leveraged to solve some common challenges and business requirements that we run across over and over again when we're implementing J.D. Edwards. So I'm going to go through all of those, and like Kisha said, if you have any questions as we go, as I get to the end of each one of these, I'm going to pause if there are questions. Obviously, in the space of an hour, we don't have a ton of time, so it may be that there will be some questions that I don't get to. If that is the case, we will absolutely follow up. I will follow up and respond to you. There's also not really much opportunity in the space of an hour to get into the configuration behind what I'm going to be showing you. Some of it doesn't really need much configuration, but three of these four do need some. If you are interested in seeing the basics of the configuration, the slide deck does have some screenshots of some of the basics of configuration, but it does assume that there's some prerequisite basic knowledge to do it. But if there is something that I talk through that you're interested in seeing more or learning more about the actual configuration and setup to make it work, there's a couple of things that we may be able to help you with. One is you can always contact us and set up a time to talk through specific business situations that you might have, where some of these or something similar might be useful to you. And the other thing is that I'm going to be doing 3 sessions in Focus Dive Deep in October. It's the week of October 18th, I believe. I'm doing 3 sessions that actually tie in pretty tightly with what I'm going to be talking about today. One is how we can improve order entry efficiency, and I'm thinking primarily sales order efficiency, but it would also apply pretty much the same way to purchasing. One is related to how we can use UDOs to improve the efficiency of order entry. I'm going to be doing another session real similar to what I'm talking through today, but with different content. Like I said, I love these tips and tricks. If I enjoy finding them, I enjoy sharing them just as much. So another session just like this. And then the first thing that I'm going to be talking about today is using Enterprise One Search, which to my mind, I now think is one of the most underutilized tools that exist for anybody that is on a release of JD Edwards that will support using it. So today I'm going to show you a little bit about how you could use it. I'm going to be doing a session at InFocus that is going to get into the how do I actually set it up? How do I make it look like some of the things that I'm going to be showing you today? So at that point, let me turn off my webcam so that you don't have to keep on looking at me pulling funny faces. All right. So I am going to start off by talking a little bit about Enterprise One Search. And for anybody that hasn't run across this before, it's basically a facility. It's a user-defined object, and it goes through the same build and deployment and security process as any of the other UDOs, like CafeOne pages or custom grids or anything like that. And it basically gives you the capability to do searches and return data in the system over and above or differently than what you can do if you're searching within the standard applications. There's a handful of things that I think are really cool about it. One is that it doesn't require that you understand the basic search techniques that you need to do if you're searching within an application. So you can inherently allow it to do wildcard searches without having to worry about whether you've got the asterisks in the right place, whether you've got capitalization on, off, anything like that. So it tends to be an option if you've got a user base in a particular area that struggles to do standard searching within JD Edwards. It's cool because you can build these searches and the return results over both tables, over data tables for transactional data and master data, but you can also build these searches over business views, which can be more flexible and give you, make it simpler to get the data that you're actually looking for. And it also gives you the capability, once you've performed a search, to be able to do an action based on the records that were returned. So if you're doing a search and you find a record that you want to work with, you can then define what the allowed actions are that you can do based on that record. When I go through and show you a couple of examples, you're also going to see that there's 2 pieces to the Enterprise One Search. There's the primary search piece of it, where we would tell the system which fields we want to actually allow search over when we put a string of characters in. And then secondarily, what do I want to output as my main output? But then there's also the capability to build on with related data. So I can do an initial search and then build out a separate set of related data. And you'll see you can do multiples And that can be based on different tables or on different business views. And what I think every time I start building these out is it kind of straddles between being a search and almost being an ad hoc reporting tool. I'll come back and talk about where you can use it afterwards, once we actually take a look at a little bit of what's available. So you should be seeing JD Edwards displayed right now. And you'll see up at the top, I've got this search box, and that is what's going to drive my Enterprise One search. So I could start typing either part of a customer name or part of an address location, an item number, basically any piece of data that I might find a match on in the system is a target for me to do in this search box. So I'm going to start typing the name of one of my customers. And you'll see that I've got the option here. It's going to tell me based on the searches that either I'm authorized to run or the searches that are that I have selected to actually make active for me. It gives me the option to either use this string that I've put in and perform all of my searches, or to select a specific search that I want to do. So I'm going to start off by doing this customer search. And it's going to take the 3 characters that I put in, the ESP, and it is going to go find any customer records that match that. And what you'll see in here is that I've got multiple fields that are being output. So when I build this Enterprise One search, I specify which fields in the table or the business view that I'm building my search over. I specify which fields I want to use to drive the search, and then I specify which fields I want to use as output. So I can use multiple tables here. You're not limited to just doing one table or one business view. You can do across multiples. And you're also able to format the output. So rather than having 3 different lines like you're seeing here, if I wanted to, I could make this a wider display and have the whole thing displayed across 2 lines. I can change the text labels that go with this. So one of the complaints that we hear a lot is that some of the out-of-the-box data dictionary text descriptions don't really describe to the users what they're looking at. We don't always want to go ahead and just change that text description. We don't want to change it at the data dictionary level because it might hit across multiple different functional areas. But if somebody would be using the Enterprise One search as a search mechanism, we can change those text labels in the search to be whatever we want them to be. And that kind of allows us, if we want to target the descriptions even to particular user groups. And I hadn't really thought of this one until I was just talking about it, but one of the implementations that I'm working on right now is working with both a US company and their Mexico company. And there's really limited translation that they want to do, but there are some users who need to periodically get in the system, mostly for troubleshooting and looking things up. And while they don't want to go in and do full localization and they don't want to do full translation, this would be a very easy place that we could override text labels and actually provide Spanish iterations of the searches and just change those text labels to the local language. So once I get my results, and if I had multiple customers that matched that search string, I'd see them listed here. I've got multiple things that I can do. So like I said, there's related information. If I click on the related information, this one is set up right now to show me what the current sales orders are. So basically open sales orders for this customer. And then if they've got any unpaid invoices is what this is looking for. And I'll show you another one in a second, because you can build this to look at so many different things. You could basically make this a one-stop shop for either a customer service department or for your AR team or something like that, you could build this out very effectively so that rather than having to bounce between multiple different applications to look up the information, they were able to come in and through that related info, be able to slice and dice and see all the pieces of information that they need related to those transactions. And then the other thing that I can do is select an action. So part of setting up my Enterprise One search is saying, once I get a record, what do I want to be able to do with it? And so the select action shows me that I've got 4 different applications that I can go into from here. Statistics would take me into some of their AR statistics if I wanted to see days outstanding and delinquencies. I could go into the customer ledger if I wanted to see open and past invoices. I could go into view sales orders. So one of the related information tabs that we had in there was for open sales orders. I can define when I launch into that application, what do I want to display? Do I want to do it based on status? Do I want to do it based on dates? And then the last one, since I am looking at a customer search, would be to take me to the customer master so that I could work with that customer. So I'll just select one of these for right now, and you'll see that based on the customer that I selected, it's passing in that sold to address number. So part of the definition is saying when I open this application, what data am I going to be passing in order to drive the query that's going to be performed when I open the application. So the search always drives from the search into an application. One of the things that I was kind of would be a nice to have for me would be if I was in an application to then be able to use the search to actually pull another data value in. It doesn't really work like that. It'll allow you to do it as a lookup, but it doesn't allow you to put the data in at that point. If I've already got a search active, so if I've got a search string here, I can flip through the other searches that I've got set up. So if I switch over to my address book search, you'll see here, this is a super simple one. It doesn't really have much information as far as actually finding my customer record. But this one here, the related information, this kind of gives you more of a flavor of how I think that you might use this if you were going to use it as a kind of an overview of the searches that you might have set up for a customer service function. So what are their sales orders? What's current? I would personally probably build out a past due orders that was in here. What's shipped? So this may be a ship not invoice. And then what is currently back ordered for this customer. So as I click through these, it's going to change and show me the actual data behind these. And I can scroll through. And if I go back to that main page, I've got the option to download that related information. So if I wanted to say download my my current sales orders, it'll give me the option to export that data to an Excel spreadsheet. So for anyone that at that point wants to manipulate that data, it gives me my original search information, and then I've got all of the fields that were being used to drive what's being included in their sales order file. And like I said, you can use this word search over just about anything that's got JD Edwards data. As an example of that, let me put in an item. And so here you see where I've got multiple different outputs being driven off of this one search. Off of that one search, I've got supplier item output, I've got item master output, and then there's no setup here for this, but if it was set up as an equipment or as an asset, I'd see additional information being displayed. And this one's kind of cool because it gives you a sense of what you can see from an item management perspective. So if you were using this either from the perspective of purchasing or planning or something like that, it didn't actually refresh it in here. You would see if there were open purchase orders for this item. Let me try that one again. Yeah, it's not happy. This isn't what it showed me earlier. I might have been in a different environment, but this is handy because I could see for this item, if I had it on purchase orders, where it was included in bills of material, and for active work orders, where it was currently part of the work order parts list. So, I mean, honestly, the world's your oyster with this one. You could find ways to use this for consolidating the inquiries that your users have to do across multiple different applications, or you could use it to streamline and simplify searches. And the one that made me start using this was anywhere that you're using the address browse. When you're in that browse, while it does display the city, state, and zip, those fields are not queryable. So the first time that I thought to use this was to be able to do a search for a customer address record based on both the customer name and one of the city, state, or zip code. And the other thing with the address browse is you're not able to filter in that browse screen on the address search type. So anytime that you go in and you start searching on a customer name, when it shows you the matching records, it's going to show you matching records for vendors and employees and the whole 9 yards. You see everything, not necessarily just customers. Whereas if I build a search aimed at looking up customer information and I do it through the Enterprise One search, I can limit it to only returning the search types that are going to be valid for customers. And this is what I always do. I get so excited about this one that I talk too long and then have to sprint through some of the others. But Kisha, do we have any questions on this?
I don't see any questions, Bernie.
All righty. Cool. Then let me, I'm gonna have to try to move my thing so I can close this.
Kisha, there's actually one question.
Okay.
It says, I don't have a search box at the top bar like you do. What version of JDE are you in, or what do I have to enable to see the search?
So I will say that it's for sure available in 9.2. I would have to ask a technical person whether it is a release 9.2 function or whether it is related to the tools release, because I know that some of the UDOs you're able to use on lower releases as long as you're sufficiently far along with the tools release. So that is a question that I will actually have to check with one of our technical folks and follow up. I'm making a note of that. All righty. So let me hop back over here. I'm just gonna kind of scoot through this real fast, but I put some examples in here of places where I think that this is super useful. One that I'm about to set up for one of my clients is to be able to easily get to tracking information. So either if the customer calls in with a tracking number, to be able to find what shipment and what sales order it was related to. But basically it's a way to be able to hop the data across multiple different applications or multiple different business views without having to keep on jumping between those applications. And I'm going to scoot through these just so that you see that they're in here. One thing I do want to note is obviously over time you could end up with a lot of these searches in here, especially if you have a lot that you would publish out as star public. So you are able at a user level to define your searches so that you only see the ones that you find to be relevant to you. And you can control who sees the various searches based on either defined users or user roles. The security is managed through UDO security, the same as it would be for custom grids or for CafeOne pages. So like I say, there's screenshots in here that you can kind of refer to, and it gives you a little bit of behind the scenes at Lookup and how you would actually configure these. So it doesn't get into the real guts of it, but it does give you a little bit of a flavor of how simple these are to set up and how simple they are to change the formatting for how it's displayed. All right. So that takes us into the next one, and I'm actually going to hit the next two topics kind of at the same time since they're both sales order entry related. CafeOne pages, I kind of put myself in the category of an old dog learning new tricks when it came to the UX1 tools and UDOs. It was something that when I started looking at them, I thought they were cool. I understood that they should be useful, but it didn't always strike me as being obvious when I could use them. And it wasn't until I got a few of them set up that I started to kind of join the dots really quickly when I would get a request for how somebody wanted to look at data. You know, I can build a CafeOne page to do that. So I'm going to look at a couple of different examples that I've actually used at one of the clients that I'm working with right now. But CafeOne views are a tool that allow us to basically display additional information that's going to supplement whatever the main application is that you're working with. It allows you to put information or data with the user at the right time for them to make a decision or actually do something based on where they're at in the process. It can improve efficiency. So I'm going to show you sales order entry, but for what I'm going to show you, this could just as easily port across into purchasing, into transportation or anything like that. But I do put a caution on the bottom here because a lot of times I find that using CafeOne views, especially the way that I'm about to show you, anytime that I'm finding myself using them, I recognize that I'm also supporting something that isn't necessarily a best practice process. What I'm going to show you the example of is using CafeOne pages to kind of support notes, customer notes, and how they would get used in sales order entry. I'm not a fan of any kind of customer notes driving action anywhere because they're literally as good as the person both reading them and then acting on them. Almost anything that is text note driven would really get identified by me as an opportunity that there's something either in the process or the configuration that probably stands to have a little bit of an improvement made to it. But in the real world, practically every business that I work with uses notes, whether it's related to items or customers or carriers or some entity that is part of their business, to make sure that the user does the right thing, whether it's how they package it, how they ship it, whatever it happens to be. And so the two that I'm going to show you are how we can use a text note display in sales order entry that could communicate things like customer shipping preferences. And I'm also going to show you how we could use a CafeOne page within that same page to display the ship to address that is associated with the order. Because one of the complaints that I keep on getting from clients is that seeing address numbers is dandy, but that doesn't actually tell me where it's really going to. And if I'm dealing with an order that's got an address override, I've got no idea that there's actually an override address specified in there. So let me hop back into JD Edwards. Where's my JD screen? There it is. All right, so I'm going to go into sales order entry. And for simplicity, I'm just using P4210 here, but you could do the exact same thing in P42101. And I'm going to start entering my sales order. And all I'm going to give it is the branch plant that I'm going to be shipping from, and I'm going to tell it who I'm shipping to. So let me choose my ship to here. And you see that I've got this text screen displayed over on the right-hand side. And right now there's nothing in here. This is going to display text notes that are associated to my sold to customer. So until I actually get my sold to populated in here, it doesn't have anything to retrieve the text information from. So I could either manually put my sold to number in here, or if I had a related sold to set up for my ship to, as soon as that related sold to was resolved, when my defaults get pulled in from the customer master, at that point, as soon as my sold to number is populated, I'm going to see my text notes that are associated to the customer. So a couple of things, I've got the opportunity to have multiple different layouts. So right now I've only got one custom layout in here, but I can turn that off. If I don't want to see any CafeOne screens, then I can go to a no layout and get rid of them completely. I might have multiple different ones. So depending on whether I'm entering a direct ship order or an EDI or managing an EDI order, whatever it happens to be, I might have multiple different views that I would want to use so I can cycle through them in here. And then if I just want to free up the real estate on my screen just for while I'm working with the order, I can always close the these CafeOne pages over on the right-hand side and then just reopen them if I want to use them. One of the things that I like about using this, and I have the application name, I never remember it off the top of my head, but this is actually using the Customer 360 customer piece to display the notes. And the reason I like using this is it actually allows me as the user, as long as I've got security to do it, I can edit these notes on the fly. One of the things I really don't like about using any kind of notes to drive actions is they rarely seem to get cleaned up, because even if somebody recognizes as they're doing a transaction that that these notes are really messy and there's a lot of old stuff in here, if they can't edit them right there and then, they tend to get forgotten about. So if I needed to either add, change, or delete something in here, I would be able to make that change on the fly. I could delete some, I could add new stuff in here and save those changes. And then the next time that the text notes got displayed for this customer, these updated notes are what would get displayed. And so, like I say, that's dependent on actually having security to be able to save changes to the customer master attachments, as well as being able to view them. And then there's a second CafeOne that I've got going on here that is conditional. So CafeOne views can either be driven so that as soon as you get the data to actually feed the CafeOne query, it's going to display it. You can also have conditional CafeOne displays. So I'm going to have, as soon as I go ahead and click the OK here, that is going to populate the taken by. And so I'm one of the users that, let's say, I want to see the ship to address information displayed, but I don't want to see it until I've finished entering my sales order header. So what's going to happen is once I click this green arrow, it's going to populate my user ID as taken by, and that is going to be the trigger to display the other CafeOne page, is having the taken by equal to my user ID. So as soon as that gets populated, there's another CafeOne page at the bottom that is going to be displayed that is now showing me my ship to address information. And for anybody that looks at either address overrides or goes in and enters address overrides in sales order or purchase order entry, you'll recognize that that is the application that we're looking at here. And I've got it set up currently so that I can only view it. I can't change it. if I wanted to go in and actually change the ship to address information, the way I've currently got it set up, I would have to go through, do my form exit, and go into my order address to change it. But you can have this configured so that if you wanted to allow it, you could actually support entering the ship to address override right here in the CafeOne page. So I feel like this is another one where the world is just wide open for the places that you can leverage CafeOne pages. Kind of the problem with them is they take up space. And I mean, you can see as soon as this one pops up, I'm losing a good chunk of my page. So unless you're working with dual monitors where you can split it and have your CafeOne pages come up on a second monitor, you do have to take into consideration that if you've got 6 CafeOnes on the same form, you may not actually be able to see much of the original form unless you're closing them down. So that's where I would say that it's probably sometimes more efficient to have multiple different layouts with different CafeOne views rather than trying to bake everything into one page. But there are for sure some things that I use these over and over. So for example, if I have got customer service inquiry, I'll have a layout that allows the user to easily look up shipping related information. So rather than having to scroll over, find the shipment, find the carrier, find something else, I'll display the work with shipment screen for that shipment right there, and then potentially have another CafeOne that would display something like shipment reference number. So if I wanted to see a UPS tracking number, or I wanted to see a bill of lading number or something like that, I would have the ability to do it. Any questions on that before I carry on?
Bernie, there are a couple questions, but
Okay.
I think it was on our previous area though. One of them is, are these tricks like the search set up included in Common Foundation course?
I guess I would ask whose Common Foundation course?
Okay. And then another question, are these tips and tricks following the security setup of the software? For example, someone doesn't have access to the P4101.
That is a really good question. So yes, that the UDOs do typically respect the underlying JD Edwards security. You do have the ability to actually further layer security on that through UDO security. You're able to specify either individual users that have access or roles that have access, and that would then layer over the top of the standard JD Edwards security. Again, I've got to be honest, I'm a totally functional person, and I tend to do a look like a deer in the headlights when somebody gets into security and technical type questions. So I will verify whether things like with the word search, whether you would be able to see the fields. I just don't think you'd be able to see the data. I think that you'd see text labels, but you wouldn't actually see data that you didn't have the ability to view through applications. With CafeOne, absolutely. If you've got a CafeOne page that is trying to use an application that you do not have security to, then it simply won't be displayed.
Okay. And along those same notes, another question is, do we store historic CafeOne displays similar to a ledger of changes or as values of the notes?
I think that what you're asking is like where I've got this page for the notes here. If I'm making changes, do I have a record of what was there previously? The answer is no. Out of the box, you wouldn't, because this is still using the standard customer master. It's still just updating a media object text attachment on the customer master record. It's just that we're doing it through the CRM customer master application and allowing access straight into that attachments tab to be able to view and potentially do the edits. So it doesn't work any differently than if you were to do it through the customer master, and it behaves the same. It does not keep a track of what changes were made. The only thing that you would see is if you actually looked at the customer master and at the media object attachment record itself, you'd see the last edit that was made, but it wouldn't tell you what it looked like before the change was made.
Okay, that's all the questions we have for now.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to bounce into the next one then, which is using the multi-item select screen. And I'm not sure that I've actually ever seen anybody else use this application, but I really kind of like it. So if you're entering a sales order or a purchase order, and on the sales order side, this works in both P4210 and P42101. It also works with P4210 when you're creating a transfer order. One of the options under the form exit is the multi-item search. And what this lets you do is, rather than having to keep on bouncing in and out of the item browse, so if I'm just entering a normal sales order and I get here and I go in and I search for my item. I'm sorry, this is going to be slow because we just did a full package deploy. All right, so let's say I grab this guy and then I enter the next one and I don't know what the item number is, so I have to go in and find it again. As a user, when I first started using JD Edwards, I actually worked in sales order management a lot, and I didn't like constantly having to bounce in and out of that item number search every single time I was entering a new line. What the multi-item search allows you to do, and I should probably cancel this or it's gonna throw me a hissy fit. Oh, let's bypass a new line. There it is. So the multi-item search screen does allow you to keep on searching for items and basically building a list of item numbers that you want to pass back to the sales order. And except if you're just repetitively searching for items and it's easier than keep on having to click the magnifying glass and go in and out of the item number, to be honest, there's not that much benefit to using this screen. But the places that I have used this, as an example, if you're doing some type of VMI or consignment business, and if you're using a lot status code that you're designating either for a particular customer's inventory, or you could even do it if you had like quarantines or quality controlled inventory. If you want to do a transaction that is only looking over a section of inventory that has a particular lot status code on it, this is one way that you can do it. So one of the options that I've got in the screen is to specify a lot status code. So I could be looking at a particular branch plant and say, I only want to see everything that's on a returns quarantine hold, or I only want to see inventory that is currently associated to a particular customer's VMI program. As long as I've got a lot status code that allows me to drill down just on that inventory. The other thing that you saw over here is I can pull up items based just on who the supplier is. So if you think about this from the purchasing side, if you don't have either a template set up that displays all of the items for that supplier, you can use this to drill down and only show items in purchase order entry that have got that particular supplier as the primary supplier for that branch plant. You can look by location. So again, kind of similar to the lot status code, if you have a location that you use specifically for an inventory program type like VMI or a consignment, if you have a returns location where you want to do a mass move of inventory from A to B, you might be able to pull up all of the inventory that you want to look at to put onto a sales order just by looking at the location. And we've got other fields that are related to the location record. So we've got the memo lot 1 and 2. And then we've also got the ability, if you're using matrix items, segmented items, you can use the actual template name, or you can use any of the segment values in order to look up and search and select. And especially if you're using matrix items, this is really cool because you can select in this screen that you only want to display omit 0 quantities. Now, normally you can uncheck this. There's actually an Oracle bug that I'm waiting for the ESU to get applied. This is only grayed out right now because we have the quality module turned on, and there's a bug where it forces this to be checked. But ordinarily, you can choose whether you want to include 0 quantities or not. And if you do have segmented items, this is kind of cool because you can see in here what you've got with available quantity. So if a customer is calling in and they want to order a particular type of t-shirt, or I use this at a customer that did eyeglasses, you're able to look at what they wanted, but then you can find if there's something similar that you actually do have availability. And there are other places that you can do that, but here you're doing it actually within the sales order without having to get into an inventory inquiry application. And you're doing it from a place that you can add it straight back onto the sales order. My favorite use of this, and it's one that, again, I kind of stumbled across completely accidentally, is I have a client who effectively does a milk run. They have a truck that drives around between 4 or 5 different warehouses. And as it drops off material at one warehouse, they have a staging area where they put inventory that needs to get transferred over to the next warehouse. And they were finding it was really, really time consuming to look and see what inventory was sitting in this transfer staging location. Then somebody was having to enter a sales order, a transfer order for it, take it through the shipment steps to generate a bill of lading to actually get the truck out of there. And what we did was they were using RF scanning. So at the point where they were moving inventory into the staging location, we started having them update, actually do an inventory transfer, move that inventory into a location that we call transfer. And then what happened was at the point where the truck came in, they would look, and if they were going to be able to load everything that was sitting in that transfer location, they would come into this multi-item search and select screen and see everything that's sitting in here and say, okay, we're going to load all of this. It shows me what's available because none of this material should be committed. So in addition to selecting these items, I can also select the quantity. So I'm going to ship the whole lot. I'm just going to cut and paste from that quantity available column and say, yep, we're going to put all of this on one truck and ship it. And then to select the items, it's as simple as highlighting the ones that I want to select and saying select them. Once I do, I'm going to see I've got a green check mark next to all of these items. And then when I OK out of here, it's going to pull all of these line items back onto my sales order. And because I put the quantity in here, it's also going to bring the quantity back with it. You don't have to do it all in one go. So you can do multiple searches in here. I could now search for something completely different that was going to go on that same truck and select that and kind of build out. I can do multiple searches, multiple rounds of selections. And when I'm done with everything, then I would click the OK button, and everything that I have incrementally selected is going to get pulled into my sales order. And I'm not using a transfer version here, but if I was, in addition to creating my sales order, at that point, when I save it, I'm also going to create my OT so that when this gets to the receiving branch plant, they've got a matching purchase order to be able to do the receipt against. One thing that I didn't mention in here, so I do really wish that in addition to having these kind of query and search options that are in the header, there aren't any QB options in here, and I do really wish that that they would have included the item category codes in here, or in the same way that they allowed search based on the segments for segmented items, that they would have maybe put a tab in here for item category codes. I have had a couple of clients who've done a small enhancement in here to actually add category codes in as a QBE so that you can search on that and get really, really flexible search within this screen. But it is a cool way if you end up with oddball requirements where you're having to do a mass select, or you've got a condition that means that you only want to look at a subset of items, like a particular supplier, like a particular location, or like a specific lot status code. This is an option for a way that you can limit the items that you're actually viewing and selecting to put on a sales order. And I'm going to pause there in case there are questions. Nothing?
Questions, Bernie?
I'm sorry?
I said, I don't see any new questions.
Okay. I bet everybody's sitting back and saying, how is she going to finish this in the next 7 minutes? I'm an expert at this. I talk fast on the last one. All right, so the last one that I've got on here is using advanced pricing to provide sales order controls. And what I mean by that is, obviously, advanced pricing, we know that it can be used to change the actual price that is applied to a sales order line. That's what it's intended to do. But what I want to show you is how you can also use advanced pricing to use attributes of either a customer or of an item to provide a sales order control, to prevent a sales order from just being blindly processed if there's a condition that is tripped by the sales order that we shouldn't allow to happen. And an example of that would be I had a customer that produced like high-end ride-on lawnmowers, and anytime that they were going to be shipping to California or to certain countries around the world, there were emissions requirements that meant that there were only certain models in their inventory that should be allowed to be put on sales orders that were shipping to those destinations. And so what I did was set up a customer group that used a category code that identified if the ship to was an emissions controlled location. And then I used a category code that was on the item that indicated whether it was either an emissions compliant vehicle or not. And through advanced pricing, would do a validation. And in the event that I had a ship to that did not allow high emissions, and we selected a vehicle, a mower that didn't meet the low emissions requirement, it would allow the order to get entered. It would prompt the user and say, you got a problem here. You're triggering an alert. It will allow the order to get in the system so that somebody can actually view it, but it prevents the order from actually being processed. And I'm going to show you an example with an obsolete item because I find that the obsolete item stocking code, while it's very effective, it stops orders getting in the system. It's kind of too effective, because if I make an item obsolete, I can no longer do any kind of inventory related transactions on it. So if I need to process a return from a customer, I pretty much have to go into that branch plant and make my item non-obsolete for long enough to enter and process my RMA, and then I have to flip it back to being an obsolete item after the fact. So this is something that I have used as an alternative to setting an item to being obsolete while we're still going through a period where we may be processing pricing adjustments or corrections or processing returns for an item, and not making the item actually truly obsolete from a stocking type perspective until it's reached complete end of life and we don't expect to do any more transactions against it. So I set up an item to be obsolete. And what I'm going to see is when I put this item on my sales order, it's going to give me a warning here. It's saying it's a mutually exclusive adjustment. And what is happening is behind the scenes, I've got a couple of advanced pricing rules set up that are called mutually exclusive adjustments. And what it means is the system recognizes that I should not be allowed to apply both of these price adjustments to a sales order line. I need to either stop one of them being applied, or I need to investigate, and if it's okay, then I can choose to go ahead and release the hold that the order is going to be placed on. But this control here is recognizing at the point of sales order entry that I have an item that has a category code that says that it is obsolete. And what I did when I set this up was I used the cycle count category code and I built an item group over it. So anytime I enter a sales order line, it's validating. I kind of set a control here. This is my control point. It applies to every single line that gets applied on a sales order. And then if I enter a line that is obsolete, now I've got these two mutually exclusive adjustments trying to be applied, and the system's like, nope, you can't do this. You see, there's no pricing impact. All I'm actually doing is adding on $0 when I apply this rule. So it's not changing the price at all. Literally, the only thing that it's doing is giving a heads up to the user that the order is going to go on hold unless I do something to resolve this. And one of the reasons I like this is if you're dealing with EDI, you kind of want to get those orders in the system as opposed to having them just fail in the inbound process. So using this approach for obsolete items gives you a way to actually get the orders in and then manage what's going on with the obsolete item situation. I'm going to have to stop talking because I know I'm about to run out of time. In the PowerPoint document, I have a little bit of background information on the setup that goes into this, and I've also put a bunch of other examples of places where I've used mutually exclusive adjustments. So if this is something that you're interested in, ping us, ping Mirakisha, and we will get that copy of the PowerPoint to you. And like I said before, if you have questions related to any of what I've shown today, if you have questions about kind of extending some of what I've shown and how it may fit within your business, would be more than happy to get on a call with you and talk through your specific scenarios. In case you can't tell, I'm a total nerd when it comes to this stuff. I really enjoy doing it. And so I would probably actually enjoy even more getting to talk about your individual processes and how this would apply to you. I think we've got like maybe a minute left, Kisha, if there either is a question or if you want to say anything by way of wrapping up.
Well, I appreciate everyone's time, and I know that there was a question about the presentation being published, and Bernie, you touched on that, so we
Yep, I'm going to
appreciate
scoot back here and display our email addresses. So here's my email, and here's Kish's, or you can call into the office. The phone number is on there. Feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions, or even if it's not directly related to what we talked about today. My favorite part of my job, I'm a solution architect. I live to solve problems. So even if you have a business challenge that we didn't directly hit on today, we'd very much enjoy the opportunity to talk with you about how you might be able to use JD Edwards to solve your business requirements.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks. Bye, guys. Nice talking to you.